not a lot there. Jeremy Ruckert doesn't scare me as someone who's going to take over for Mason Taylor. This is a guy that was a second-round pick, one of the top tight ends in this class, and I just see the opportunity here, not just for the 82 on average the last 3 seasons that Conklin is leaving, but I referenced Devontae Adams. I don't know who the number 2 wide receiver is going to be for the New York Jets. Of course, Garrett Wilson just got paid. He's the tried and true clear number 1. But after that, you look at that wide receiver depth chart for the New York Jets, there's not a lot there. It's like Allen Lazard and really some names you haven't even really heard of. So I think that Taylor could not only be the number 1 option at the tight end spot, but this is a guy that could rival for the second most targets on this offense for Justin Fields outside of Garrett Wilson. Of course, Breece Hall could factor into that as well out of the backfield. But I look at a guy like Mason Taylor, and if he is able to thrive as a pass catcher, there's a lot of opportunities there, a lot of targets for him. And we've seen Justin Fields really favor the tight end. You go to Pat Frymuth last season with the Pittsburgh Steelers, go back to his days with the Chicago Bears and Cole Kmet. Cole Kmet even led the team in receiving yards, the Chicago Bears, a couple of years there with Justin Fields. So he throws to the tight ends, and the opportunity is there for Taylor to take over.
This next one with the Chargers, it really caught my attention when I saw it when we were prepping for this, because the Chargers had an impact rookie at wide receiver last year with Ladd McConkey. Can they do it again with Trey Harris?
I'm going to throw a terrible pun out there. They're going to hope that lightning strikes twice in the second round at the wide receiver position. Ladd McConkey was the second-round pick last season. Awesome, unbelievable rookie year, over 1,000 yards. Was just an unbelievable addition for them for Justin Herbert. But you saw it last year specifically in that playoff loss. While McConkey went off, he had like 190 yards receiving in that loss. It was kind of overshadowed by the 4 interceptions for Justin Herbert. But you look at the next most prolific pass catcher in that game, it was tight end Will Dissly, with 2 catches for 16 yards on 5 targets. This offense desperately needs a number 2 option, and you see here Trey Harris, what he was able to do at the collegiate level last season, 182 yards, basically 129 yards receiving per game. You're talking about history he was making in the SEC, mind you. So I think that this is someone that you really have to pay attention to. He's someone that can kind of be that outside presence while McConkey works over the middle. You were hoping that maybe it could have been Mike Williams who came back in free agency, but he has since retired. Quentin Johnston hasn't worked out as a first-round pick over the last few years. So Trey Harris could, very similar to when we were talking about Taylor, is a young guy that could command a lot of targets early in his career because of the lack of presence elsewhere on the roster. So Harris is someone who has an elite quarterback, a number 1 wideout that he's playing opposite of Ladd McConkey. There's a lot of opportunity there for him to swallow a lot of those targets.
Everyone's favorite story during the draft was, where would Shedeur Sanders land? He lands in Cleveland, but he was not the only rookie that they drafted. No, Dylan Gabriel, part of that draft class as well. And there's the quarterback room: Deshaun Watson, Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, plenty of NFL experience. Then it's the 2 rookies. But what do you think about Dylan Gabriel, or what do you believe may be able to separate him from this crowd?
Yeah, he is my underrated quarterback to watch. And you referenced it there, right? Shedeur Sanders was the story of the 2025 NFL draft because of his free fall. But let's not forget that there was a quarterback taken ahead of Shedeur Sanders on this roster in Dylan Gabriel. They chose Dylan Gabriel over Shedeur Sanders in the 3rd round. They ended up just taking Shedeur Sanders later on in the 5th. But when they had a decision to make at the quarterback spot on day 2 of the NFL draft, they chose Dylan Gabriel. That has to count for something, right? As much as we're tantalized by the potential of Shedeur Sanders, it doesn't seem like the Cleveland Browns are. Yes, they took him, but they look at a guy like Dylan Gabriel, who's very experienced, 24 years old, an older quarterback prospect. But we saw a guy like Bo Nix last year at the same school be an older prospect and still thrive. So this is kind of where the Cleveland Browns need to look themselves in the mirror and ask themselves what they want to do and what do they want to accomplish in 2025. We saw it through the list of quarterbacks. It feels like Joe Flacco could have the inside track to start week 1 this season just because he has the experience at 40 years old. But I don't know what that does for the Cleveland Browns over the long term. Yes, it may help you be competitive earlier on in the season. Maybe it saves some jobs. But if you are looking for the big picture, if you are looking for some quarterback that can help you over the Joe Flacco really means to you in 2026 and in 2027. If Dillon Gabriel builds that foundation early on, to me, that is much more valuable than a couple of wins and losses in September. So I wouldn't sleep on Dillon Gabriel getting a nod here at some point this season. I think that, frankly, all of these quarterbacks might see time on the field this season, but Dillon Gabriel is one that we should be paying attention to.
This is one of the fun parts, one of the best parts about this time of year in training camp, seeing which rookies are going to make GMs look smart once the preseason get here. Tyler Sullivan, thank you so much. And just to recap, his top 5 under-the-radar rookies to keep an eye on. A couple wide receivers on this list, and Kyle Williams and Trey Harris. Caleb Johnson, running back out of Iowa with the Steelers in each of his first 6 seasons there in D.C. CBS Sports NFL writer Tyler Sullivan joining us now. And Tyler, I guess McLaurin showing up is a good sign, but him going right to the PUP list, is that a signal that he's holding in?
I would say so. And yes, of course, it's a positive sign to see your star wide receiver when you're in the midst of a contract dispute show up to the facility. But we kind of have to unpack this a little bit, right? Because there's a difference between showing up and putting the pads on and being ready to go as the regular Terry McLaurin, and then there's, as you indicated, the possibility of a hold-in. Now, what Terry McLaurin is doing by coming into the facility, he's avoiding fines, right? So when we talk about these hold-ins, the whole point of it is that you're basically still holding out, but you're just not getting fined. And up to this point, Terry McLaurin had already been fined around $200,000, $50,000 per day that you've been missing practice. So if you're looking at it from the financial perspective, this makes sense to show up to the facility. And they said today on Sunday that he's still dealing with that ankle injury that he dealt with at the end of last season. Could that just be part of the hold-in? We'll have to see how all of this develops. But at the very least, if you want to look at this optimistically, it's encouraging that the wide receiver is in the building. He is at least in front of the front office when we're talking about possibly locking him in for the foreseeable future with a new contract. So the fact that he is at the team facility, even though it's on the PUP list, even though it's probably a hold-in, at least you can look at that with a bit of encouragement, a bit of optimism.
Tyler, we've seen some huge paydays for wide receivers across the NFL these last couple of years. Does Terry deserve to be amongst those highest paid in the league, near a guy like Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, or CeeDee Lamb?
I think he's going to look for it. I mean, I don't really hate on any wide receiver, any player for that matter, trying to get the most amount of money possible, but I don't think that he's going to be in that Jamar Chase realm. That is special air that you have to be in, because when he signed that deal, he wasn't just the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. He was the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. TJ Watt has since taken that title, but still, you're talking about north of $40 million per season. For Terry McLaurin entering his age 30 season, I don't necessarily see those heights being reached, but you have to look at his contract right now. He's making $23.2 million in average annual salary. A lot of money for me and you, but for a star number 1 wide receiver, you need to be in that $30 million per year AAV to really make yourself feel comfortable. For me, I look at the contracts that were recently signed this offseason for DK Metcalf and Garrett Wilson more recently. Those are the deals that I think make a little bit more sense. It would get Terry McLaurin into that top 5 discussion in terms of highest paid wide receivers in the NFL. It's around $33 million in AAV, so almost a $10 million increase of what he was making per season. That, to me, feels like the sweet spot when we get this all said and done.
All right, so he's in the building, but do you see this situation continuing into the regular season, or do you think Washington and Terry get a deal done before week 1 kicks off?
I would say that this is the encouraging step, right? So I think that the fact that he is at least showing up, and as I indicated earlier, avoiding fines first and foremost, but the fact that he's there and the fact that he's in front of the front office the entire time that he's there, it just provides more windows for them to negotiate, him and his agent, and with the front office and Adam Peters. So I think that this gets resolved before week 1. I think that Terry McLaurin, who has been a team leader for this organization through some trying times, wants to get this done. He knows how close this team is from really taking that step forward. I mean, they were in the NFC Championship a season ago after an abysmal season, actually abysmal, decade plus over the last few years for the organization. So they're finally turning the corner. He's part of that, coming off a career year, 13 receiving touchdowns, cut 70% his targets from Jayden Daniels. They feel it. They improved this offseason. They brought in Deebo Samuel. They improved the offensive line with Laremy Tunsil. They've added pieces on the defensive side. So the upswing is there for the Commanders. I would assume that there's an emphasis on both sides to have Terry McLaurin as your number one wideout come week 1, because to me, it's important. You look at the start of this season, it's the kind of the soft part of their schedule. That is where I think they can build up a lot of wins to really inflate their win total. At the back end of the season, after their bye, it's kind of a gauntlet. So you really need to improve your win total for the first half of the season to really give yourself the best chance to win the NFC East, to make the playoffs for the second season in a row. So there's a lot of emphasis here to get this done with Terry McLaurin so you can start the season off right.
And staying on the football side of all that, you sort of touched on it, but getting Jayden Daniels, you always hear the sophomore slump with quarterbacks. So how important is it for Daniels to get his top wide receiver into camp at this point before we get deeper into, let's say, the preseason and approach week 1?
Yeah, it's massive. The more reps that you can have with your number one wide receiver, it's only going to help you really kind of shake the rust off before we get to the start of the season, right? I think that Jayden Daniels and Terry McLaurin, they showed you last season that they kind of have day one built-in chemistry, 13 receiving touchdowns. Like I said, he got 70% of his targets. That was a career high for Terry McLaurin, and that's just an insane number when you really think about it. So, yes, of course, if you're Jayden Daniels, you're looking at this situation, you're saying, boy, we made so many strides this offseason, improving the offensive line, bringing in a legit number 2 in Deebo Samuel, but it doesn't really mean much if Terry McLaurin isn't there to be your crown jewel as the number 1 option in the passing game. So to have him at least make the step towards signing a contract by at least showing up to training camp today, and maybe, you move forward to a deal before the start of the season, that's going to be massive for Jayden Daniels to avoid that sophomore slump that you kind of fear going into year 2.
All right, Elvis is in the building. Tyler Sullivan, thank you so much. Yes, Terry McLaurin again reporting to training camp. Of course, he wants that new deal. But let's take a look at the highest paid wide receivers by AAV in the NFL. And here's why he wants some of that money. He comes in as the 17th highest paid wideout in the league at